for anybody to understand, from the rich, to the very poor. And, speaking of very poor, I mean, he would meet with Mother Teresa when she was alive. I mean, this man literally went into the trenches to touch lives. To you, with the biography that you wrote about Billy Graham, what would you say are some of the most striking things that people may not know about the man?
Oh, I think there's a lot that people don't really realize about Mr. Graham. He grew up on a dairy farm in Charlotte, North Carolina. There's some great character building traits that come into your life, Keith, when your father wakes you up at 3:30 in the morning to go milk cows. You can imagine that that did something to him as far as his work ethic and what he learned from.
That's hard work.
From those kinds of experiences. Yeah, and on that farm there in Charlotte, he had his father, Mr. Graham, had Reese Brown was an African American. He had African Americans working with him there on the farm to do the work, and so that kind of experience as a young man, seeing how different people from different skin colors could work together, that had to affect him somewhere there in the deep south, of Charlotte.
Well, Terry, as you know, and from my research of the broadcast, I was born in 1970, but before I was born, Dr. Graham refused to preach at some stadiums across the country because they were segregated. So they made sure that everybody was sitting together. Then he preached. I mean, he was pretty cutting edge.
He was, very much so, to integrate his meetings early on. That was one of the principles.
We all come to the cross, is what he said.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's what we have to do. People were just stricken by him, even if they were Muslim, even if they were Hindu. They seemed like they were drawn to Billy for his walk, for his integrity, I guess is a big word that I want to use. Terry, tell me what some of the practices were when he was out on the road before he would even ever enter a hotel room.
Yeah, a lot of those principles, Keith, were formed early on with the Billy Graham Association. It's a document that they made in the 50s called the Modesto Manifesto, and that's actually where he got his team together there in Modesto, California, and they came up with some principles, some rules, some guidelines that they used, and they still use today. So, for example, Mr. Graham never traveled alone. He always had another man with him in the room where he was staying, where he was eating meals, all those kinds of things for that accountability and integrity. Also, Evangelist had kind of a reputation of, just coming in, preaching, bringing people to Jesus, and then leaving. Well, the Billy Graham Association didn't ever want to do that. They wanted to work with the local church. And by church, they used the word church in the broadest use of the church. So, conservatives and Pentecostals and Catholics, and Protestants,
Lutherans, all of them.
They wanted to get them all there, and so that as people came to Jesus, they could plug those people into the local church so that those people could grow
absorb
in their faith,
them, yes.
Learn how to read the Bible, have fellowship, all those kinds of things. And so that was another basic principle. They also, in Modesto, is where they decided that they weren't, in English, we talk about speaking evangelistically, where we exaggerate the numbers and stuff.
Yeah.
And they decided early on that they were going to be very precise about that. So if they had a crowd and, only 500 people showed up and only 10 of them came to faith, that's what they were going to say at the end of the day in their news releases. They weren't going to exaggerate and puff up those numbers.
Good.
So that's why when you see a news release from the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association, and Franklin is out there and his son Will is an associate evangelist, when you see the results and the decisions of what was made during that time, it's a precise number.
Yes.
And that was very intentional.
Honorable.
And still continues to this day.
Honorable, and it's nice to see Franklin Graham just pick up the mantle, and he has been really, in essence, for, probably over a decade or more, running the Evangelistic Association. Billy's health the last, 10, 15 years has declined. What was he suffering from?
I think he was having some Parkinson's syndrome, but he was also, his hearing was pretty much gone. I read here recently where Ann, his daughter, came and visited him, and he had to put like a headset on, and she had to speak through a microphone in order for him to hear her
Wow.
voice. So, not good hearing, I guess, at that point in his life.
No, but that's old, 99.
And he also had macular degeneration, so he wasn't reading
a
whole lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
So I understand a lot of his life and his ministry was, prayer is what he turned to in those final days, and I think that's an amazing resource that all of us as listeners can use. We don't think that we can speak to the God of the universe, but we all have that.
But we can. Billy Graham never, reading stuff that he said, but never really considered Earth his home.
No, absolutely. He knew that he was bound for a different place.
Heaven was his home, and he had his eyes on there and wanted everybody else to know that. If Billy was on the broadcast today, and you just know him that well, with his writings and his ministry and your part with Decision Magazine, and I'm sure read quite a few sermons of Billy's through the years, what would he want people to know about Christ at this point? What would he want people to know?
Yeah, he would want people to know that his earthly body is gone, but that he is living in eternity with God and Jesus is what he would want us all to know, and to celebrate that homecoming that he had. I think that's I think that would be his focus.
Well done, good and faithful servant, I'm sure will be the words for Dr. Billy Graham. He'll be missed, but his ministry continues in a big way with Franklin Graham and many of the team members still running this thing. Will the ministry continue?
Oh yes, absolutely. They set up the ministry so that it's going to continue and run, and God will continue to use it in ways that are exceedingly abundantly above all we ask or think, I'm sure. TerryWhalin, our guest, and the greatest evangelist of Billy Graham, a biography of America's greatest evangelist, as he put it, and he indeed was. We're going to talk more about his life and his impact on people worldwide. We'll be back with more For the People right after this.
We'll help you survive this thing called life. We're for the people, for the people, for the people is there.
It's unlike anything you've ever been through in your life, man. I was driving. This kid threw a grenade at us. It went right over our vehicle. It was 12 years old.
The shockwave went through my head, rattled up my brain, and left.
Danger is around you 360 degrees at all times, and you can't unlearn that.
It's impossible to describe the sacrifices these men and women have made to protect our freedoms. And the job of rebuilding their lives is massive and growing every day. Many will need the programs offered by the Wounded Warrior Project for years to come.
I didn't know what PTSD was. All I knew is I was having nightmares. And when I got released, my reintegration was go check in at the VA, man.
My first coping mechanism was use drugs. Just numb it, don't feel anything.
I was angry. I'm trying to pull myself out of that right now.
Your gift today of $19 per month will honor and empower these veterans so they can aid and assist each other.
The Wounded Warrior Project is a life raft.
I can say this without question that I wouldn't be here today if it weren't for it.
Wounded Warrior Project is the first step, getting back out into the world and reforming yourself outside of the service.
Call or go online with a pledge of $19 a month. You'll receive this Wounded Warrior Project blanket, and your gift will provide critically needed programs that rebuild lives.
That was my first feeling of actually being a part of something bigger than myself again.
Well, I lost a few really close friends overseas, and if I quit, I'm going to let them down, and I'm not about to do that.
I'm learning to face my fears head on. To trust and see what happens at the end.
It's a long process, but I had the drive and desire.
Please, call or go online with your gift right now.
For the people is there.
Your American heritage. Some wore civilian clothes, some still strutted in their Nazi uniforms. All wore earphones to hear the translators. They sat in rows in the Nuremberg courtroom, surrounded by helmeted military police. Their names read like a Satan's who's who: Goering, Hess, von Ribbentrop. They heard the litany of crimes against peace, humanity, and the rules of war. The once pompous, preening Nazi leaders fidgeted nervously as the sentences were handed down. Death by hanging. That was the word from the International Military Tribunal. To some, it brought a sense of closure. But this has been Don Keyes, remembering still on your American heritage.
Remembering our American heritage with For the People Weekend. Log on to our website at forthepeopleshow.com for your American heritage.
Republic, not an empire, and I think we need to get back to those, republic virtues.
Amen. For the People loves America, and for that reason, we will fight the fake news media with our broadcast, conveying the truth with news and insights that matter. Our dedication to this mission is a group effort to fix America first. Can we count on you today to help For the People? Supporting For the People helps us broadcast on radio and online at forthepeopleshow.com. That's forthepeopleshow.com. You can make a one-time donation or become a monthly supporter today and help bring a show that matters to people that want to be in the know without the big media spin. Common sense, family values, and a conservative point of view, all on For the People. To join For the People as we strive to broadcast live across America, log on to forthepeopleshow.com. That's forthepeopleshow.com. All the best. May God bless. For the People Weekend continues. I am Keith Allen, and it's glad that you were able to spend some time with us here, and also TerryWhalin waking up a little bit early on mountain time there in Colorado. Terry, I appreciate you spending this hour with us musing about a man who really, I don't think he would say that he was anything special, but in fact, he really was special, wasn't he, Terry?
He was. He was very special because of the anointing that God had on his and his life and his ministry. It was a gradual process, though, Keith. People think that Billy Graham just became an adult and stepped into the pulpit and started preaching these amazing messages. But it was a process and a learning experience for him too, and many people have forgotten that kind of thing.
Yeah, maybe he wasn't all fantastic when he first started. I mean, I've never heard the first sermon, but just like anything, he had doubts, didn't he?
Oh, he did. He did. And about his first sermon, by the way, he prepared 4 sermons the first time that he spoke, and he practiced them and got all ready, and he got up there, and the first sermon went, and then the second sermon went, and the third sermon went, and he did his 4th sermon, and he sat down, and he'd only been speaking like 5 minutes.
Wow.
So, so he had to learn the process.
Sure.
As well as all of us do, how to draw a crowd, how to keep their attention, all those kinds of things. Mr. Graham had to learn as a part of that process.
In a way, an evangelist is kind of like a salesman.
Yeah, they are, and early on in his